We're live.
Well, it says we're live, so I know it starts in like a couple seconds earlier. So,
yeah, I don't see
anywho,
anything yet.
hopefully, I don't. But how's it going, everyone? Welcome to Sinister Sunday, part 11. Tonight, we're going to be talking about our favorite thrash bands, and if we got time, we're going to be talking about our favorite punk bands and whatnot. This is our kind of closest Sinister Sunday stream to the Christmas stream we're probably going to do. Don't ask me what theme we're going to do for Christmas, but probably something related to it. But yeah, so that'll be next Sinister Sunday. Got with me some panelists here. Jax from Jax Be the Ripper, previously known as the Bunny Barn. And we have Jessica from My Life as a Death Metal Drummer's Wife. Try saying that 5 times fast.
You know it's a parody, right, Jesse?
I must have screwed up.
Parody?
I don't know.
It's a parody.
It was like the times I've talked to Jesse, and whenever I brought you up, I was like, okay, I'm gonna screw up the sentence here. It really sounds like it should be a reality show. You should just make
that's
your own.
Exactly what it is. It's a parody of a reality show. I'm making fun of reality TV shows. I'm on some skits.
Fair enough. We're gonna be talking, like I said, again about our favorite thrash and whatnot, but there might be a couple of sidebar conversations going on tonight. There is just myself and the 2 ladies here tonight. If Azag is working time, he might be joining us later. So that's Azag from Azag's Abyss. So hopefully you can join. I'm not sure what's going on. Total Metal Rejection. He might be popping up sometime this stream. Austin, aka Lord Husk from Husk's Evil Empire, is sitting this one out. He's kind of de-stressing from work, and he's kind of been super busy, so he might join us next stream. Jessica is going to be helping me again with the chat and moderating. So if you guys have any questions in there, definitely feel free to ask us some questions throughout the stream. But if you really want to make sure your questions are panelists, there is the super chat option, which like I said, it helps out the stream, helps out the channel, but also gets answered. So definitely consider doing that if you want. But yeah, so I guess we'll start in with the thrash side of things first. Okay. Sorry, Seth but yeah, whoever wants to go first, be my guest. Talk about your favorite obscure thrash. Talk about your favorite big 4-1. Floor open for you.
Jess, you want to go first?
With I guess what I would consider the roots, the basis of thrash. You can't have one without the other. Of course, the 70s started a lot of genres of different types of music, and I would like to think bands like Thin Lizzy, UFO,
nice.
Little Feat, definite inspirations for thrash metal bands. When you really analyze the structures of those types of music, you can really see the basis of a thrash element. And then, of course, in the late 90s, you had Judas Priest. You had the new wave of British heavy metal. Yep. Iron Maiden, Ozzy. Lots of stuff coming out of that direction. And when you look at like Ozzy Osbourne, okay, he was in Black Sabbath, and we all know without Black Sabbath, there wouldn't be about 13, maybe more different types of genres of metal that would not be here. Right? Right or wrong?
Oh yeah.
Because if you could think about it, like you can hear the Black Sabbath and doom metal. You can hear it in thrash metal. You can hear it in metal. You can hear it in war metal, even black metal. I mean, it's there. So when Ozzy went solo, it took, of course, it's more speed thrash, but I mean it's a thrash element. I mean, of course, it's Ozzy's project band, but when you realize the actual music and you think of that era, bands like Twisted Sister were coming out, Quiet Riot. Then you had bands, different bands that, I mean, these bands that are spawning off of bands I'm talking about, from the 70s. So then we got the 80s. And then you had, which to me, Slayer in itself, thrash, because most of the speed or Iron Maiden had a little dark element, of course, but Slayer took that dark element that more of a Judas Priest and an Iron Maiden had, and took it and put more of a satanic element into it, a deeper satanic element into it. That Slayer is a thrash band from the 1980s. Everyone knows. Come on, we can all name that band, right? Right.
Yep.
They're and now when you nowadays and they say what influenced you, they're going to talk about bands from the 1980s and early 90s. And then you had like a lot of speed category. Last episode, of course, we did a little bit of a thrash talk. My love for the German thrash metal is not a secret, right? We all know this. I express. So you had your German speed thrash coming, your Sodom, your Kreator, Destruction, and then you had an American band out, like Annihilator. There you go, some thrash bands, and then you have Metal Church, bands like Metal Church, that were a little lighter, but they still were a thrash band. Definitely
Band.
There you
This
go.
band right here.
Yep, Metal Church. Boom. Metal Church, yes. Very. You had this wave of 1980. You got Testament, Exodus, Sanctuary, Nasty Savage. Was also another Sabotage. Love fucking Sabotage. So then you hit thrash, and then you can break down the thrash. You got power thrash. Definitely you can see the influence of bands that are power thrash coming from bands like Iron Maiden and Judas Priest and Dio. Very, very strong influences from Dio, whether it was from his solo projects. It's very important to review the roots of thrash metal, because thrash now is its own, I would say it's definitely more of, like, you can say thrash, take that, and then you're going to break it down. You got your power thrash, you got your speed thrash, you got your power speed thrash, you got your dirty thrash, and then you got bands like Cryptic Slaughter. The thrash element there, but then you do feel, and we're talking about punk rock tonight as well. So we're gonna, you think the bastard children of thrash and punk rock, I touched on it on the last episode as well, and here comes the hardcore, Um, and punk definitely, right, is definitely its own genre of its own and has its own things, but we're gonna get into that later. I definitely love exploring historical aspect of metal music and the way our genres are tiered. So any music fan, if I were to reference a band, I could use something historically known by most people. That's very useful to gain it and obtain that knowledge. And thrash music is very powerful. I also was a big fan of like, and then we have like some of that early '90s music started to come around, like bands like Sadis. Very hard. Those vocals were very, very hard. And the drums, oh my gosh, I swear to goodness, the drummer must have cracked a cymbal on every fucking song when they recorded Chemical Exposure. I swear to goodness, because those cymbals sounded like they were getting beat the fuck up. But it's just so angry and just so vile, but at the same time, thrash has an emotion to it, and and then you turn around and then you find bands like sacred, really talking about some important issues, politically active issues. And then you'll have another band, another huge that I absolutely love, would be Wasp. I know a lot of people are going to say, oh, thrash, Wasp, thrash, you know what? If it wasn't for Wasp, a lot of people wouldn't be into thrash. It's a gateway band. I love Wasp.
Yeah, no, Wasp was pretty decent. They're also a pretty decent kind of gateway band into heavier genres.
Gateway, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
exactly. You have to have a gate. Some of the gateway, but and if you see like bands like Wasp, of course I love a band like Wasp, and you look at the guitar influence of bands like that, and then you realize you can take it back to bands like Rainbow, bands like UFO, from that era. And like I said, we wouldn't have one without the other. And any who found Wasp in the mid to late 80s and was thirsting for more had grown up and found Megadeth in the early 90s. And and if you enjoyed bands like Suicidal Tendencies, you would enjoy bands like Agnostic Front, or MOD and SOD and DRI. Are all bands I've seen. I've seen DRI many times. I will always enjoy, and I mean, those are the bastard children of thrash meets punk rock. And this is a genre of music that had bastardized and spread out and created other then somes. Here we are coming back around, and I'm noticing a very new wave of some newer bands. I obviously did the female death metal series or extreme female series, and I mentioned Nervosa. There's an awesome female thrash band and newer band, Enforcer. I'm really digging that newer era band, not from the 90s or the 80s. It seems like a lot of bands are starting to resurrect the late 80s, early 90s thrash appeal. And that late 80s, early 90s thrash had down people that were into that hair metal stuff. And it also had bridged that gap from bands like we were talking about the big four and how everybody wants to talk about the big four. Well, there's 300,000 documentaries out there about bands like the big four.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this show here, I think we're here to talk about those extreme underground bands that need to obtain notoriety through people like us, because some of us were there when these bands were getting started and need to carry on the tradition and not let them be bands like Sadist, bands like Sanctuary, Nasty Savage. These eras of music, it has so much structure. Thrash music is cleaner than punk rock, and like I said, you have the hardcore, which is not as clean as thrash, but not as dirty as punk. But when cherish a genre of music, and now that it's coming back around, and it's starting to very talented bands that I deserve recognition, and this is going to help keep our music alive and keep the level of interest in the fans to present some newer bands. You got Toxic Holocaust is very active in the scene, very good music, very well written. The presentation for the fan, I do dig the fact that they're presenting not just a piece of music or art, they're presenting a product, and that's what fans want. And when new fans are searching out newer music, they want to see bands that are presenting the package.
Yeah.
And I think of bands like the Big Four, the reason that they got so big, and the reason why when you ask somebody from the 1980s that was considered thrash, they're going to Slayer or Metallica. I mean, that's what you're going to hear. You don't hear people talking Sanctuary, and I'm sorry to say this, but Sanctuary wrote some really great music, but you don't hear about them like you do Metallica. I mean,
Yeah. Yeah.
And the speed. I'm sorry, I'm a huge fan of Megadeth. Huge. I like Megadeth better than Metallica any day. I know somebody's gonna agree with me on that one, but but this is the thing. I'm sorry, but Destruction, who didn't get as much notoriety, their speed riffs are speedier.
Yep.
And it's if people, you say name a speed thrash band, Megadeth. They forget about other bands like Annihilator. And Sadist and all those bands that come out of the late 80s, early 90s era.
Like
and
Spider.
Right. And this is important for us to bring to the table, because I really enjoy seeing some new bands, and I hope they heed a fan like me. I hope they heed my I'm not gonna say a warning, but just heed my to keep up the tradition in the true route. If you're gonna thrash band, keep it thrash.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I guess that's what I basically have to say about some of that, and go ahead with some of the other panelists. I'd really love to hear what you guys have to say.
I totally agree. Like, I would never have thought about UFO having. It's funny because I do love UFO, but I just never really would have brought that together with like putting that in with thrash metal, because when I think about it now, it's like, yeah, I can now hear it in the thrash. Punk, I think maybe because like, when I first found out about thrash, the only thing we knew about it was like, okay, it's metal mixed with punk. That's what everybody used to say back then. I don't know if people still agree with that now. But when you do, like, I don't mean to go back to the big four, but when you do hear Kill 'Em All and Peace Sells, you do hear like the punkiness a little bit into it. Eventually I feel like they moved away from that. But you're right, like the problem with like the big four is like I don't know exactly how it was caused or anything, but there's so much more attention on them than anybody else. Because I've heard of Sodom and Kreator before. I've just never actually heard like spent time listening to their music. And when I saw Kreator for the first time, I had to actually see them live in order to get into them. And I'll admit, for me, I think that's what it is. There's just some bands I like them a whole lot better live than some studio album. And eventually, like, I found out about Death Angel, and then of course the shirt that I'm wearing right now. So there's so many other bands out there that don't get the recognition they should get, and you know they're probably better than the big four. So, I mean, I guess that's all I have to say about that. I was never into Municipal Waste, though. I just could not get into them. I just couldn't.
Yeah, is an interesting mix of kind of punk and thrash. That whole, you know, people kind of, I don't know, relate Municipal Waste to Toxic Holocaust, but I don't think the Holocaust really has all that crossover sound. I always found Joel Grind's Toxic Holocaust project to be closer to black metal than crossover. But Municipal Waste was a little hard for me to get into. Like, it took a bit of conjuring myself into liking them. Like, just listen to them until you get it. But yeah, it took a bit for me to get into Municipal Waste myself.
Yeah, and then like I know Exodus, it took me till when I saw them live to really appreciate them more and realize like, wow, you know, everybody knows I'm a big Megadeth fan, but here's the thing. I've seen Megadeth, Anthrax, and Slayer live like probably 2 or 3 times. There's nothing memorable about their live shows. Exodus, however, that shit is memorable when you see them. And to me, they're probably better than any of those bands. Because they actually make it more memorable and everything. Like, it's just like I've said in the past, I said in the past, I'm not a good mosher or anything, but Exodus is one of those bands that actually makes me want to, and I've actually attempted, unlike the other bands.
Yeah.
That says a lot for a band if it can make you do that. If like I feel like now like the big four, they're just like a good show just to watch and that's it.
Yeah, I actually really agree with you. There's bands that sound better live or is probably better to experience live than to just throw on their CD or tape or whatever, because the energy, or you don't quite see the musicianship at play if you're just listening to it. Like, you could hear the notes and, you know, hear what's going on, but like, if you actually see them playing live and see all the effort they're putting into what they're doing and how much fun they're having, and kind of like looking around the room and seeing like the reception thing, you don't quite get it unless you see certain bands live. I'm with you on not really feeling the whole Exodus thing. Like, but I probably wouldn't go out and buy all their albums. I may eventually get Bonded by Blood, but it's not on the top of my list of thrash things to get now.
The one I still have like a hard time getting into, I don't know, maybe I'm just listening to the wrong stuff, is Overkill. I don't know, like if somebody makes me recommendations, I'll listen, you know, let me know what albums to listen to. But for some reason, I just haven't, like, I don't dislike them. It's just I haven't taken the time to want to listen to them. Like, if anything, like right now, I'm listening to Ghoul right now. And then I saw them not too long ago. They're like a really fun band to watch. They're more like just like the fun type of band. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Someone just mentioned Gamma Bomb, for example, and their type of thrash isn't like a various type, kind of very jokey, very cartoonish kind of vocals at times. The lyrical subject matter is very things as well. Sometimes it's like old horror movies or kind of like obscure like indie film references for lyrics. Yeah, they're not like overly serious band, and you kind of have to give them a few listens before you kind of get it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. But as for like,
Uh,
no, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, like once you what or kind of some thrash bands that you stumbled upon after that, kind of like the second tier.
Like the second tier. What do you mean, like?
Well, I mean, like if you consider the big four of every genre, kind of the first tier wave that genre get into, like you start kind of branching out and getting to more obscure bands. Like, what was your second tier? Maybe not like super duper obscure, but
Well, I have taken for a while. I took a very long break from thrash metal, and the reason being, like, in case you guys are new to who I am or whatever, I've mentioned it in my channel before. I have such a short attention span. 1 minute I'm listening to this type of subgenre, the next minute I'm in a whole nother one. Power metal was something I was listening to for a while, and then symphonic metal, which I know you hate, so, or at least I think you don't like it. So, and then like it's just like the other day I was listening to folk metal. So I'm always bouncing around. But the reason why I took a break from thrash metal is because I hate to say it, maybe it was just because I was younger or something. Thrash metal heads really annoyed the hell out of me because they just overdid it with the partying, and I was just growing up, and I was like, look, I like my Jack and Coke and all, as we can all freaking tell. Like, I'm over here, cheers to you guys, but I don't want to be wasted on the floor all the time like they are. So I kind of just stepped away for a while until I think maybe when I heard of Havoc and Powertrip. That's when I was like, okay, I want to give these guys a shot, slowly but surely. And then that's where I found like, I always feel like I'm saying the name wrong. Sodom. I'm sorry if I'm saying the name wrong. Oh, and then the other band. See, this was always like, I know who was it? I don't know if it was Julian Gonzalez, and I forgot who else. But I know there was like a couple people like debating about Possessed, because I love Possessed. But people would debate like, is that thrash or death? I grew up thinking they were thrash. Now people are like, no, they're death. I'm just gonna say they're thrash, but I can see why people think death. Though, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But I guess like,
well, the thing about
go ahead.
Sorry, the thing about Possessed is they're kind of like Hellhammer and others of quite a bunch of different kind of metal subgenres. Like Hellhammer and Possessed both like early metal elements. They both have early thrash metal elements. They both have like proto black here and there. I know Fenris from Dark Throne probably like swears by Possessed and Hellhammer, and like thrash and death metal and black metal bands got their influences from. So they're at the forefront of a bunch of those new genres. So it's kind of hard to pinpoint them with one.
Yeah, true. But yeah, that's just like I said, back then, at least in my area, I'm not vouching for everywhere. At least when I was growing up, that was just what Possessed was known to us. So, but yeah. I wanted to get into punk just real quick because I get the feeling this is just going to be a short topic on punk music. Like favorite bands or anything. I just wanted to know, have you guys, because I feel like I'm the only one, well, obviously not the only one because I went to go see them, but do you guys even heard of TSOL or The Professionals? Because I feel like I'm like the only one who has heard those two bands. And I've seen TSOL like last year, or actually the beginning of the year, I should say. So are you guys familiar with them? Because I'm pretty sure if I say the Misfits, everybody's going to know the Misfits. I've seen them too, but like, have you guys even heard of TSOL?
No, ma'am.
I've heard
No, I haven't.
I've heard of TSOL. I think I might have even like clicked on one YouTube video of their songs, but I'll be damned if I remember what they sound like. What was the other band that you mentioned
The
besides
Professionals. So
TSOL?
that's a band that really nobody has heard of, but yeah, they just have a popular one called Join the Professionals, and then they were in the movie, but it wasn't about them. The movie was called Ladies and Gentlemen, The Fabulous Stains, and it was with that Diane chick. Oh God, she's like a popular actress, but at that time she was like, you could tell she was like 19 or 20, but she was starting like her own punk band, and it was just showing like the process, you know, of her and her band and everything getting up there. And then like, you know, you saw like the griminess to being a punk band and everything.
Yeah.
So that's where I found out about the Professionals. Other than that, yeah.
I don't think I've heard of the Professionals.
Hmm?
Oh, I was just saying, I don't think I've heard of the Professionals.
I'll send you video clips of it if I remember. But yeah, TSOL, I think like their famous, like well-known song is Code Blue, because it's basically talking about fucking the dead. So but other than that, yeah, I think it's just with me, it's just like the Misfits and Social D, which I would have really never thought they were punk. Well, what was the one called? Oh, I forgot the name of it. I could just remember how the album looks like. But I mean, I can see why they think it's punk, but I don't know. I think because like a lot of psychobilly. See, this is another thing in my area. There's a lot of psychobillies. I can't stand that music, but they love Social D. So I always saw kind of like a crossover to psychobilly and all that. But obviously that's going to have punk influences in it. But like pure punk, I'd never seen them as pure punk.
Fair enough. Yeah, I mean, punk's a weird thing because unless you kind of grew up with it, there's not too many people that are into punk nowadays. Like to a lot of people, punk died out in the 90s when like pop punk started, and like bands like Blink-182 and Green Day.
The pop punk came along.
And yeah, like the bands like that, I think a lot of the but like the generation or ours, they kind of, when they hear the word punk, they're like, oh, you mean like Blink-182 and Green Day and all that
I
stuff?
don't think of that.
It's like, no.
I mean, I remember the only reason why I remember the toy dolls, because I had a friend who, like, we were friends for so many years, but we had a fallout. Like, he hated metal music. Like, he hated it so badly. And I hated punk music. But I remember the toy dolls because of him, and because like whenever I'll go on vacation, he'll sing the song to me, "Come Back, Jackie," because like it's basically about a person going on a holiday. So that's all I remember. And then like, you know, my full name obviously is it's Jacqueline, but I just go by Jax. But he would always like sing the song to me, "Come Back, Jackie." And then it was a catchy song, I'm not gonna lie, but is the Dead Kennadys considered punk? I'm not even sure. But I know there's
oh yeah, these are definitely punk.
Yeah, okay. I never got into them. I was like, no. They were the ones that sang that elephant song, right? I might be wrong. Okay, I might be wrong. Never mind. Forget what I said. I'm like, it's starting to come back. The alcohol's bringing back memories to me. So I just can't put it together.
There you go.
I needed a drink.
Get with the punk.
Oh my God, but who else? I never listened to Circle Jerks. I know who they are, but I've never listened to them. That's like a popular band. Bad Brains is another one.
Yeah, actually, the Circle Jerks, I find they're like really, really good. I definitely like the first 2 or 3 Bad Brains albums too. Like, I really, really need to get them. And Rock for the Light or Rock the Light or whatever it's called. Those 2 are really good. I'm not really in all like ska thing, but like the hardcore punk shit that Bad Brains did was fantastic.
What about Vice Squad? Did you ever get into them? I seen them live.
Vice Squad, to be honest. Like, I'm sure I missed out on some previous, like, know these punk bands, but yeah, my rabbit hole took me other places when it came to punk.
I remember back, I think in my early 20s, everybody had like a huge debate on it was Ride the Lightning by Metallica, because a lot of people didn't like that album. So obviously I had my punk friend, and then I had like the metal scene, right? And that's the one album I do like by Metallica is Ride the Lightning. And I had the metal scene tell me, no, we hate them. We hate that album because it's too punk. And then I had the punk scene tell me, no, I hate metal. What is your thoughts? I want to hear your guys' thoughts on that.
That's kind of weird to me, because if you've seen any of the early Metallica documentaries, they'd say like, oh, we're too metal for the punk kids, and we're too metal guys. But I honestly don't see any punk when it comes to Metallica. Like, they were of Thrash as soon as they started like the No Life to Leather demo material. Like, I just don't see any punk influences, like attire, like the ripped denim bleach jeans, or the leather vests and shit is what the punks kind of wore before the Thrash took that over. But yeah, musically, I don't see punk in Metallica at all. But
like, I didn't see it in Ride the Lightning, but like I said, I could kind of see it in getting Kill Them All. Maybe just a little bit, but not that much.
Yeah, maybe. Like, the whole punk thing is like just really fast or 3-chord power chords, right? And that came from just kind of taking what rock did and more lo-fi and more aggressive. Like, they started putting more distortion on it, more gain vocals. So maybe that's where people are thinking like Metallica were punk, because they kind of were even doing faster, like 3-chord power chords or 3-note power chords, or whatever you call it. Because like, if you do learn some of the early punk guitar, they kind of do have that like circular 3-chord progression thing sometimes. So I guess.
What about you, Jeff? What's your opinion?
I was gonna chime in a little bit, talk about a little bit about punk rock and some of the like historical things. And when we think about punk rock and the originators of punk rock bands like the Sex Pistols, you see some of their like former influences. They were, picking up bands like David Bowie and the Who. They had what's his name? Oh man, I forgot his name. That crazy Elton John used to, before he went really commercial. Elton John was actually pretty influential to a lot of people that formulated the punk rock scene in England. You take punk rock to the very formulation of the roots, and you even see how punk rock is from the 1970s, the early 70s, and it came out of there because those people, those Elton John, they were listening to the Who and the Elton John, and then you had David Bowie and Adam Ant and acts like that coming out of England, and you had a class of kids, a lower class of kids. They wanted more. They were like, yeah, David Bowie's extreme, but they took the extreme flamboyantness of David Bowie and they dirtied it and made it punk rock.
Yeah.
This is how we started to formulate, like here we had in England, you had your Ozzy Osbournes and your Black Sabbaths, and then people that were inspired, like I said, by Elton John, in his wild days. If you guys ever seen the Who's movie Tommy, have either one of you ever seen Tommy the Who?
No.
Nope.
I've heard of it.
Well, want to know what's really wild and crazy? I'm gonna talk a little bit about some historical things that's wild and crazy. But Elton John and Tina Turner both were in Tommy the Who. Tommy the Who is a what do you call it? Like when you put a music to a movie, and
musical?
Yeah, musical. There you go, girlfriend. Thank you. I knew Jacqueline would pull through for me, girl. Thank you. Yes, a musical. It was a musical. And back during that era, those musicals were like popular. So Tina Turner and Elton John, she played the Acid Queen and he played the Pinball Wizard. Yeah. Now, if you really watch the movie, you can really see because they had a lot of actors in it, you can see where the punk rock people, how they really where they were really inspired by bands like the Who instead of bands like Black Sabbath. And that's why you have bands that started to form as thrash and more metal bands, influencing from bands like Black Sabbath and Rainbow and Dio. And like I talked about on the last episode, Dio was with an Elf, which it was before Rainbow, his first band, which was in the 60s actually. Did
we ever figure out if Dio was in Dinosaur Jr.?
I didn't
because I never looked. I forgot about it and mentioned Rainbow.
I didn't look it up, but my point is like people that enjoyed the Who and Elton John and bands like Genesis and ELO are gonna gravitate more towards the punk rock genre. So here we had similar genres of music coming from similar areas, in England. So, and then in the 1980s, here I go with my storytelling. I'm going to talk a little controversial, so hold on to your curtails. I hate to say this, but I enjoy a Screwdriver and Fear. Do you know who Fear is?
Fear is great.
Yeah.
They've got some good songs and they've got some what the fuck songs.
Yeah. Shout out to Hostile Graveyard. I fucking love Hawkwind. Oh my fucking god, I love Hawkwind. I've seen Hawkwind more than once. Yeah. Hawkwind though, yeah, that's an interesting. Lemmy was in Hawkwind, by the way. Thank you for Hostile Graveyard. Lemmy from Motorhead was in Hawkwind. But on with what I was talking about with Fear. Leaving from Fear.
Yeah, I know Fear.
No, Leaving, the singer, bass player of Fear. He was in a movie. He was in a movie, a famous movie, Clue. Have either one of you seen the movie Clue?
No, I didn't even know they had him in there, but no, I haven't.
Oh yeah, he's in the movie. But they're very Yeah, Fear does have Fear the Beer song. Yes, they do. Shout out to somebody was asking, what is it? 70-Second Human. Yeah, Fear the Beer. But they're controversial band. I like Fear, and actually they're coming back around. I guess coming out to play, I believe, with the Misfits. And then Screwdriver. Then you have bands like Screwdriver. I mean, I like Screwdriver. I'm not ashamed to admit it. A Dead kind, and then here's the kicker: somebody that likes the Dead Kennadys and somebody that usually likes Screwdriver doesn't usually like either band, but I like either. I like both bands. Yeah, I do. Yeah, even though they're like vinegar and oil. Yeah, you can't mix those two crowds. You can't mix the people that are usually huge fans of Fear are usually not huge fans of the Dead Kennedys, and vice versa. But I'm the exception to the rule right here. But then okay, so we have some people saying, in the chat, that Black Sabbath, a lot of punk rockers did Black Sabbath. I didn't say they didn't like the Black Sabbath. I just said that you're going to find that a lot of those people are going to strike their influences from a different direction. And what I'm talking about is like the first punk rock bands. They were a part of that like David Bowie type scene, where there was flamboyantly eccentric theatrical acts. Like Elton John was very theatrical, and his music was a lot more, not as when he became real commercial, he commercialized his music, but his early stuff was, you could see why somebody would call it my uncle had it on Reel to Reel. I can't even remember what it was called, and I don't know if you can even find it, but it's nothing like his commercial punk. It's not. See, here I go with my Freudian slips. It's nothing like his commercial pop stuff, but you can see how his early stuff, if you were young in the 1960s and then wanted to start a band in the 1970s, you're going to turn around and say that these are some of the influences, and how you got their flair, their flamboyant dress, the mohawks, the colored hair, the flashier dress. And then we moved into the then we moved into the 80s, and this is where punk took their twist. And you had those bands like Fear and Screwdriver. Well, guess what? Who they influenced? Bands like the Mentors, and then you had G.G. Allen out there. So that's like the dirty, crusty, crust punk. A little bit more, like when I think of the Mentors, they're like crust rock punk. It's kind of rocky, kind of crusty, kind of punky, dirty, perverted perversities. I have some great memories of. I actually saw the Mentors live. El Duce is he's a lovely gentleman in person. Let me tell you, that dirty old man.
Probably.
He didn't care I was only 15. He didn't care. I think he preferred that I was 15. But anyways, that's for another story. But and then you had those kind of bands. So we had those kind of bands coming in at G.G. Allen and his famous stunts. And you wouldn't have had the Mentors or G.G. Allen or some of these crusty rock punk bands, and then you had your cleaner. Then you had a whole new genre where people broke off, and then there was something, at least where I'm from, where people were straight edge punk.
Yeah.
And
that's Agnostic Front, or am I thinking of the wrong band?
No, not a Gnostic Front, because I went to a lot of live Gnostic Fronts, and a lot of dudes were drunk. But I'm talking like Seven Skins, and I believe then you had like bands coming like Skinny Puppy, and then you had bands like Skinny Puppy and 7 Seconds out there, influenced by punk. They're influenced, and they're more towards the industrial. So a lot of, if you really dissect like the industrial, what would you call the people that started it? You're going to see a lot of them like punk. I know Al Jorgensen here in Chicago was big on the punk rock scene before he started to do industrial music. He used to play at a practice spot on Lake and Carpenter on the corner. And I know people that used to rent a room right on the corner, and they were definitely into punk rock. And, you know, I mean, thrash as well. And what's that?
It wasn't Agnostic Front. I meant to say Minor Threat. Minor Threat were kind of like the big one that kind of started the whole straight edge movement.
Right. Absolutely. And no, it's absolutely fine. You know, if you have a thought and it fits, it fits. That's exactly what I'm getting at. So you had your punk rock in the 70s that was influenced from a lot of 60s music, and it broke off and started to influence a lot of different punk genres. So I mean, you would have bands like the Mentors and Fear, which anybody who likes the Mentors likes bands like Fear. You know,
yeah.
Anybody who likes bands like Lagwagon is gonna like bands like Sleepy and Minor Threat and Bad Religion. You got and then you're starting to get more into like your punk hardcore, your hardcore punk. And this is
bands like
Bad Religion.
Like that,
yes. And you wouldn't have that without a lot of the bass root punk rock bands. And moving on, when we started to transition from the mid 80s and the early 90s started to happen, and you really saw where most people where punk had broken off into these other little sub-genres, and it bled through into other places. But you know, a lot of people, I can see a lot of people that are into even death metal. If you like some sort of punk, the bands I'm always hearing, they'll say the Misfits. I mean, a lot of people that like death metal or black metal, or even if they're gonna say, oh, there's only one punk band I like, it's the Misfits, or you know, something with notable you know, notoriety within the punk genre. And you know, and the Misfits absolutely plays a big part in the scene across the board, whether it's in the punk scene or even the metal scene. You can't say it doesn't, because I can personally tell you, I know a lot of people that can say that about, and there's nothing wrong with that, you know. And it seems like they're coming back around. I believe they're playing with Fear, and I'm not even that big of a Misfits fan at all, but I'd probably want to go see Fear. And I was lucky enough this past week I went to a show, the Black Dahlia Murders, Ghoul, Havoc, all played at and Midnight, all played at this place, The Forge in Joliet, and I was fortunate enough to see them this past week on Tuesday, and it was a great show. Havoc was really good. Speaking some of the newer wave of thrash bands. And then I saw, you know, bands like Ghoul. Okay. You hear, you hear the thrash. You really do. You hear, you could really hear where if they said, hey, I do like, if one of those guys, I sat down and asked, do you like some punk? And they said, yes, I would not be surprised, because, that I bet the Mentors, definitely, when I would think of a band like them, the Mentors, totally, you can totally hear the influence. They put on a really good show, by the way, with their costumes. It was really hilarious. I definitely had a good time seeing Ghoul.
I got squirted by them, and I still have like the blood stain in my hair. It's like being so stubborn to get out.
I made sure I was far enough where I'm not going to get
too close. I was way too close.
I made sure I wasn't and that was a good ticket show. Anybody who's gonna on that ticket still, because I believe it's still out there, because I just saw it on Tuesday, please check that show out. All the bands were excellent. I had a good time. So but anyways, but you can really see how these genres of music are still carried out through these bands. Like I said, Ghoul did put on a good show, but it's reminiscent of Guar meets the Mentors meets some sort of mix like that. But and there's nothing wrong with that. It was a freaking great time, and it sounded good, sounded great. But that's a newer generation of band that I definitely check out, and Havoc too. But talking about punk rock and thrash, I thought was a genius combination, because when I do think of punk rock and thrash, even though a lot of people would say they're such separate genres of music, but you can really see how they grew up together coming out of the UK, and their histories share a coinciding history, and they've always remained more underground. Punk rock is definitely more underground than any popular type of music. Thrash metal is definitely more underground than any type of music. So there you have it. And then the funny part about it is some of the punk rockers of the late 70s, early 80s, then another direction it took. You had your fear, people in the hardcore, like those bands, Minor Threat. We talked about Cryptic Slaughter and all. Then you had people that were getting in Skinny Puppy and all that, and then there goes some industrial bands. Well, then you had new wave. A lot of people don't realize a huge influence of punk rock to new wave. Earliest of punk rock, if you were to ask new wave bands like The Cure, or I can't even name another one. That's the only one I can really come to mind. But
New Order one. I'm not sure if New Order is a new wave band, but
yeah, I would say so. But they're gonna tell you, you know what? They were influenced by David Bowie and early punk. They were, and you're gonna find that. I know a lot of people are. I'm not in the new wave, or whatever, but or Echo and the Bunnymen. They definitely are a new wave band, and back in the day, you would read interviews in magazines, and the Echo and the Bunnymen totally were influenced by a mix of punk rock and bands like early Genesis. And that's how new wave started to formulate in the 1980s. And then when people started to break free from the new wave, you got those people that were coming out of the late 80s with the new wave, and they're entering the early 90s. And then here we got grunge. Grunge was born, because a lot of those same kids that were into the new wave were also into a little bit of hardcore and a little bit of punk rock, and then grunge came around, and there you go. And I don't know, you guys got anything to add into anything that I've said so far? Just to let you guys know, I've been posting mine and Jacqueline's links in the chat. Please subscribe to all the panelists' channel. I hope you're subscribed to Jesse's channel already. I shouldn't have to drop that link, but if I need to, I will. Anybody needs Jesse's link in the chat for a subscription, let me know. But go ahead, guys. I want to hear what you guys have to say with some of the things I said. If you agree or disagree with
I'm just gonna say I agree with you because, like I said, I don't know much about punk, so I'm just gonna agree with every word you said.
Thank you.
But no, you have like such more of a knowledge than I do when it comes to like all fields of music, what it sounds like. It's not just with one. But you also have more patience than I do. Like I said, I have a short-term memory, so I'm like a fish. So, but back to you, Jesse. Do you agree? Yeah, we both drink at the same time.
Cheers. In the chat, my internet is making everyone lag like hell. So if I'm looking like a deer in headlights, I'm just kind of like sitting here not doing much. That I could keep.
Actually, I have one thing to say to Jess real quick. Since you have so much knowledge of this, like, okay, I'm barely new to your channel. So have you ever thought of just making more videos of like all these documentaries that you've seen and like do like the history of rock and roll? Because if MTV and VH1 got big off of it, I don't see why you can't. So,
you know,
agreed.
What's awesome, and I'm very fortunate within the metal community. Do you guys know who Penelope Spears is? She did the Decline of Western Civilization documentaries. She also wrote books. She lives here in Chicago, and I've met her several million times.
That's what I was thinking who it might be, but I know who she is. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm very familiar with her. I've met her. Oh my God, and I didn't mention her in extreme female, and I was gonna mention her, but I'm like, she's not a musician, but you know, she's an artist, however, and her documentaries are historical, legendary, and I've read her books, and I've gotten to meet her. And I've seen her actually recently, not that long ago. She's still going to shows. She's in her 60s by now, at least 66 years old. She's still going to shows.
Mm-hmm.
Are you talking about the one that did that Germs kind of documentary? I know there's a bunch of other bands in there too, but Fine or whatever.
I just remember Decline Western Civilization 1 through 3, and that's it. But I've only seen really the second one because
she's done so many documentaries I can't even keep up. But the Western Civilization is her most popular ones. In her books, she written several books. I encourage anybody who's truly into any type of metal history. I do want to expand my channel. Thank you for asking, Jax, about my historical knowledge for the metal community. I'm gonna be expanding. You know, and one of my people messaged me or whatever, says, "Oh, you should start doing music reviews." You know what I tell them? I says, if you want music reviews, check out Black Metal Rebellion, check out Total Metal Rejection, check out all these panelists on you know, the live stream, because you know what, everybody else is doing those. I want to do something like a little different, like history.
Agree, because the problem what I have with like album reviews, that's just your personal opinion, not mine, and I don't really care for album reviews because unless it's like Cover Kill Nation, who's my boy, but I just like, at the end of the day, it's just your opinion, and somebody else is not going to agree with it, and I don't want somebody's opinion, you know, like when I do metal around the world, I try to keep my opinions out of certain bands, even though there have been some horrible ones I found, and I just like, you know, judge for yourself, okay, and then. But everybody knows I'm a person who shows my emotions on my sleeve. Like, if I don't like something, you're going to see it in my face, even if I don't say I don't like it. So I always try to stay away from that. Plus, there's so many channels that do it. And I have been asked before to do, like, album reviews or talk about just certain bands. Like, oh, what do you think about this band? I'm like, I'm not going to talk about them.
You know, if somebody sends me a promo pack to review, I'm gonna review it. But I'm not just gonna just review bands just to review bands. Because I wanna spend time on history. You know, and when people ask me, I'm like, go watch Jesse's stuff. He's got some awesome shit. You know, go watch some other dudes out there. There's plenty of dudes doing it out there. You know, like I said, if somebody sends me something, I'll definitely put my review out there, and I'll put my most honest foot forward. But anyways, on with the topic that we're talking about, punk rock and thrash, and the influences that now that we're in a modern times of metal, and you know, fast forward to 2018, you can really see how those genres had created what we have today. And what we have today is a beautiful blend of metal and with elements of hardcore punk, and it's just a wonderful time to explore metal and keep it going, guys. So I mentioned some of my newer bands that I've seen, you know, like Ghoul and Havoc. I just saw those guys. They were freaking awesome. I had a great time. But what do you guys think? Go ahead. I want to hear your guys' opinion.
Oh, yeah, when it comes to I guess thrash, it's easy to just kind of like look at the big four and stuff like that, but there's so many good kind of secondary and tertiary level like bands like Havoc, like you said, are really good. Bands like Warbringer are really good. Then like Testament still doesn't really get the recognition they should get. Like they definitely should have been in the big four. Should have got as big as them, but unfortunately they're still kind of second tier level. But yeah, there's tons. Like I still say everyone needs to go back and watch that big unboxing I did from CDN Records, like the big thrash unboxing. You know, 14 or 15 really decent, you know, not well-known thrash bands in there, like Nailgunner, Inverno, or Kinetic, like stuff like that. Like definitely needs more a light shot. And like a lot of your favorite bands these days, if you're into like the more modern stuff, like they have like the punk and thrash bands to thank for their pretty much. So like maybe once in a while, just kind of shut off your Dark Throne, or shut off your Metallica, or shut off your Slave, and dig a bit and check out like underground thrash bands, or go check out your old punk bands and see where the music you listen to today got their, because like it's almost getting to the point where all the like the millennial kids and whatever they're doing like lives into the older music anymore. They just want to listen to like whatever's popular, or the latest like Little Peep or whatever the fuck's coming out.
Absolutely. When you find a genre of music that you love, you thirst for more. And that's how we get subgenres. And that's how we get you know, difference. And I was gonna bring up the fact that with thrash, when it started to split into the 90s, you had like power thrash bands coming out. Then you had bands that were coming out with progressive metal, you know, and thrash took a totally different turn. Progressive thrash, good bands like Prong were coming out of there. I love bands like Anacrusis. A lot of thrash elements coming out of there. Aggressive metal. Then you had some bands that definitely stayed true to the thrash roots. But then you had death metal started to get really popular. The Florida scene started making and shaking a lot of noise. And also, a lot of people don't realize also in the early 90s, the New York scene was huge. And the East Coast scene was huge. So you had a lot of bands coming out of Florida and the East Coast. And it seemed like a lot of that thrash started to fade away a little bit. I mean, the influence was still there, but people were starting to, not gravitate towards the thrash. And now I'm seeing a renaissance of thrash come through. And the younger crowd is starting to pick up on some of the oldies but goodies. And that's why I'm reaching out and saying that, a really good era, the really good era of thrash, at least in my opinion, if you were to ask me, the best eras of thrash is going to be from the mid 1980s to the earliest 90s. I would say by 93, thrash was, I'm not going to say it was dead. Kreator was still active and touring. I saw Kreator back then, and they were great, and they packed the house. But still, it comes to show that there weren't very many newer bands coming out in that era. Like the death metal bands were just springing up everywhere, like crazy. So to see some new bands coming out, I hope everybody out there checks some newer stuff out. Anybody else got anything to add to the pod about their favorite era? If you were to pick an era of thrash, like I said, mine's like the mid 80s to like the early, like 85, maybe 84 to 92 would be mine. What are yours?
Yeah, same. Pretty
That's
much
like
the same thing.
yeah, that's like pretty much what I've known too. It's just throughout that era. Yeah.
You too, Jesse?
Yeah, no, like I was gonna say, pretty much the same thing as you said, just the 1985 era to like just like 1990, 92 is pretty good. Thrash when it was just starting to get big and starting to like branch out besides like the bigger names, like that was when they're getting pretty good. But like you can't ignore the 2000s era thrash either. Like there's some pretty decent new wave of old school thrash metal that's coming out. That channel, by the way, if you're into thrash metal, it's called New Wave of Old School Thrash Metal, and so many good bands on there to discover. I don't even know where to begin, but yeah, definitely check out that channel. I might put a link in the description box below after the stream's done, but yeah.
Okay, now there's an awkward silence.
Sorry, I was posting links in the chat. I just posted your page in the chat. Subscribe to your channel.
No worries. I can't tell if there's an extended silence or if it's just my internet making everyone lag and waiting for the conversation to catch up on my end. So I'm, like I said, if I look like I'm like a deer in headlights, that's why, because I'm waiting for it on my end, because half the time I'm only hearing like every fifth or sixth word that Jessica's saying or you're saying, Jax. So I'm just waiting for it to come.
That stinks.
I mean, hopefully the chat can at least hear you, and hopefully I'm the only one that's lagging on that end.
Yeah, because I can hear Jess a lot better. I mean, I can hear you, but Jesse, but sometimes every now and then it gets a little like off, and then it'll like catch up. But I can hear like Jessica a lot better, a lot better than you. But I still know what's going on though. That's the thing.
That's good. At least you're not like completely and just no words coming out, because that'd be counterproductive.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Some
Uh,
shout outs from the chat for some bands. I'm gonna have to go with Forbidden and Violence. Thank you for mentioning those. The chat room, Nuclear Assault, Overkill, definitely Suicidal Tendencies, which I did talk about definitely. Those were all great bands from that era. Thanks chat room for mentioning it, and definitely. And then you had a lot of the thrash progressive bands like Voivod coming out of Canada. They're hey, Voivod, eh? What do you
yeah,
think
I
of
don't actually
Voivod?
like I
What?
their vocals are just their vocals just don't do it for me.
You're breaking my heart here, Jesse.
I mean, they're talented musicians.
Okay.
Like they've got talent for sure. When it comes to me and bands, like if I can't get into the vocals, I can't get into the band for the most part. Like it's like the the speakers is the person's vocals, and if I can't not understand, enjoy the vocals, yeah, get past it half the time. I mean, it doesn't mean that I don't recognize the talent. Like I get the talent there, and I appreciate what it takes. I mean, I'm a musician myself, but yeah, I got to enjoy the vocals before I can enjoy the band for the most part.
What about
And
Dust Bowl?
Voivod doesn't do it.
Does anybody like Dust
That,
Bowl? I seen them
that's
live.
fair, Jesse.
Like Dust Bowl, have any of you guys seen them live?
Who?
Or even heard their
I'm
stuff?
sorry, I couldn't hear you, dear. What did you say?
Dust Bowl, the German band?
Decibel?
No, Dust Bolt.
I've
DUS.
never
Oh,
heard.
Dust Bowl.
Yeah.
I haven't heard of that one. To be
They're
truthful.
really good because they had opened up for Obituary and Exodus last year. So they're a really good band. That's a band you should check out, especially since you're in to the German scene.
Oh, I love German metal. I love it. Most definitely.
What do you think of bands like Powertrip and oh fuck, what's the other one that's sort of like Powertrip? They're not quite hard thrash, but they're closer to like a power violence mixed with thrash.
Wait, what was the band? Okay, I heard Powertrip.
I heard Powertrip too.
I love Powertrip though. They're a good band. I freaking love them. But what was the other band?
I'm gonna go to the bathroom. I'll be back, guys. I'm going to the bathroom.
Okay.
Okay. There was a band that I was trying to think of that's sort of like Powertrip, and if I had my fucking book here, I have all these bands written down, and I be able to remember it. But yeah, I was gonna say, what do you guys think of bands like Powertrip, thrash, but not quite like hardcore or power violence? They're kind of like sit somewhere in between.
Oh, like bands like them, you mean?
Yeah.
I mean, it's like I said, I'm still getting more into thrash because I took such a long break from them. So yeah, you'll need to ask Jess for that because I just barely know as you. There's Jesse and Jessica. Okay. I'm all late. And we all have J's in our names. So that's the little things, you know?
Fair enough.
No, but I mean, Powertrip, I know was one of those bands that when I saw live, they were really good. And definitely I don't know. To me, Powertrip was like a fresher breath air when it came to thrash. Because have you ever had those moments where when you're listening to a specific genre and you just feel like everything's blending in and you need something new, I felt like that was them. Like they were that new like anger that I needed to feel again. You know what I mean? Like all the other stuff is like, okay, it gets repetitive, you know? Like it's like as much as I like Megadeth, but Dave needs to sing about something different. Like I know that's what makes the band like going into the political point of view, but it's like, dude, you need to do something different or else at least go back touch to the roots of how angry you were. Like I get it, you're not like a 20-year-old man anymore, but it's just like, so that's the thing with like newer bands when they come out. It's a fresher breath air.
Yeah. Well, I like when they like the newer bands like try to stick close to what the originators do, but then add in their like I'm not huge into crossover thrash, just probably because they add too much of the punk element. If it was mostly just the thrash element, I'd enjoy it, which is weird considering I like punk. But it depends on what element of the crossover genre that band specifically uses. Like Wikipedia is saying that Powertrip is metal and hardcore punk or crossover, but they sound like something
too about Powertrip, that they were like crossover thrash, and I never, you know, I still don't understand what crossover thrash is. I'm like, okay, what is it crossing over to? I don't know. Like I could see them like I just see them as thrash Powertrip, so I don't know what they're crossing over to. I don't hear that much punk element into them though. I will say that.
Yeah, well, it's saying they're closer to like the hardcore side of things, and the way I see Powertrip is like, I guess I can see the hardcore influence, but like maybe more of like the power violence mixed with thrash influence, not quite like punk or hardcore, but like side of like hardcore. But yeah, fuck, I wish I could remember the other band that Powertrip to me, but it's not gonna land. And fucking hell, Funeral Chic and Trap Them are popping into my head, but I don't think that's it. Like or Trap Them, Funeral Chic, sorry, is like closer to the like black crust kind of deal, but like also they also have that like hardcore sound, but it's like really dark and gritty and just a little different. Skeletonwitch is also another good one that's not just thrash, but they also
I totally forgot about Skeletonwitch. And there was like a moment where I was like listening to them for a while. It must have been like 2 years ago, but yeah, I totally forgot about Skeletonwitch.
Yeah, they're really good. I have Permafrost coming to me in the mail sometime this century. Here, Canada Post is garbage for delivering mail, but yeah, so they're really good. They add elements like black metal, add like I don't know, a little bit of death metal elements here and there, but not in like the goat horror way, like blackened thrashing death, but they don't sound like Skeletonwitch.
Sorry. I don't know. I'm trying to think of other bands, but I even tried like there was one band I know I was talking about, like, oh, what's that one French one? I don't know. Is Trust? I don't know if you heard of Trust, right? I'm not sure.
Trust?
Yeah, I'm not sure if they're considered thrash. Hold on, I'll look it up. They have that element to them, that's for sure. Oh, they're from Ontario, Canada. I thought they were French. I was like, I'm over here thinking they were French.
They could be French, considering Quebec's like right next to us.
French, that's the thing. No, it's just saying they're hard rock. I would have thought they were just metal because that sounds like metal to me. Okay, never mind. Forget them. I'm gonna call them metal, okay? I don't care. Oh, they're on the Encyclopedia of Metal. Let's see. No, it's just regular heavy metal. Just regular heavy metal. See, I was right. They're metal.
Well,
At least I got that.
There you go. I mean,
Huh?
well, I was just gonna say, like, some bands, you think, oh, this is kind of thrashy, so it must be thrash. It's like either proto thrash, so it'll be like new wave of British heavy metal, or it'll just be traditional heavy metal, but in there before like that genre kind of came around. So you're like, you kind of do have that, need to kind of just call them thrash if you hear like some thrash riffs in it. So there are some bands that do that.
Yeah, I mean, it was like how Jessica said, like, there's so many influence from other bands that, that's probably the reason why we get confused. Like, I'm trying to think of what band, because I know there's a few bands I've probably thought they were either death metal or thrash, and it ends up being, no, there's something else. I'm like, okay. So I'm trying to think which ones are they, but yeah, like, oh, for example, okay, a band that you hate, Pantera. Like, I could hear some thrash in them, but people say no, they're new metal. But after a while, it's like, yeah, okay, now I see the new metal in it. So, but I would have but I never really thought of them as like thrash, but I could hear it in there.
Yeah, Pantera is an odd one to really nail. They went from being like hair and glam metal to the Cowboys from Hell and Vulgar Display of Power era, and then like that was some like really slowed down thrash, which became post thrash. People call it groove metal, but that's not a fucking genre, not in my opinion. Groove metal is, you can say something's groovy or it's got a groove to it, but you can't call it groove metal.
It's the same thing with sludge metal. A lot of people don't consider it as a genre. Like, at least like my friends don't, and my cousin, because my cousin's a big thrasher. Like, she loves thrash. And when I try introducing her to like acid bath and like other stuff, like, she completely hated it. And then she was like, "What is this?" I was like, "Well, they call it sludge metal." She was like, "Fuck this. That's not a genre. That's just some person trying to be special." She said, "The band's just trying to be special and try to be different. I bet you they don't make any other shit." I was like, "I don't know." I was just like, "I just heard this one." So, but yeah, there is some bands, it's like they made a genre and then it's like, do you hear from it ever again? So, like, how to expand, how to get bigger. Because groove metal is something I've heard of it, but I just don't know what bands it was besides oh my god, what was it? X-Hoarder and Pantera. And the thing is, when you hear X-Hoarder and Pantera, they sound kind of similar, but they don't want to be compared whatsoever. I mean, there's similarities, but they're not the same.
Yeah, well, X-Hoarder is like 10 times better than Pantera, so they got that. As for the sludge metal thing, I don't know if I'd be willing to accept that term as a legit term of, sludge is basically just what, grunge mixed with doom?
Yeah, it was something like that.
Some people call it stoner doom. So what the fuck's the difference between stoner doom and sludge metal? And is stoner, does they have lyrics about smoking weed? Like,
I thought stoner metal would be doom metal, because doom metal sounds like it's for like self-medicated people. Like, I don't know, but I'm gonna get hate. Because we all know how much of an asshole I could be at times when I get a little too opinionated.
That's what we're here to do. That's what we're here to do, to discuss the genres.
I don't hate doom metal or anything like that, but it's definitely not one of my genres up there. But I can appreciate it. But it's just, once you start going like stoner metal, is like, well, isn't that doom metal? Because that's what it sounds like. It sounds like people who are getting stoned, taking acid. That's what it sounds like. And what was the
Yeah.
one?
Well, I
Like
think
with
there's a difference
Viking metal.
between.
Like people get so
I
mad
think
when they say Viking metal because we all know there's no such thing as Viking metal. It's just Viking lyrics because black metal sings about Vikings. Power metal, symphonic metal, they all sing about Vikings. So why we're just calling it Viking metal?
yeah, the whole Viking pirate metal thing or alien core, all those genres are just ridiculous names that teenagers throw on these things, think it's cool, or they don't have the musical education to be able to properly identify what they're listening to, so they just throw on a label, and then like 20 other teenagers hear that label that they threw on it and they're like, oh yeah, we're going to call it that together, and then it ends up finding its way in Wikipedia. And you're like, god damn it, that's not what it is.
Damn
You know, like,
Wikipedia. Just damn them. And their false information that we're able to sneak in and just put in ourselves.
well, that's it. It's just some cheeky ass teenagers throwing the term, and then everyone looking at it and just kind of accepting it and not questioning it, not putting it under a microscope and actually giving it a proper definition. They're just fucking lead blankets, and they're like, good enough.
What happened to me one time, this one is when I was just getting into like metal YouTube. I don't know if that's what we should call it. But when I had first started Metal Around the World, I try to give like at least one fact about the country if I can remember. But I remember I said something wrong about Macedonia. I confused because there's history between Macedonia and Greece, and I accidentally switched the information. And some guy, I got a lot of hate on the Macedonia one actually. And some guy told me I got it wrong, and then that he sent me a Wikipedia link. And I just found that so insulting because when I was in high school and when I attempted to go to college, I just remember all my teachers telling me, you put a Wikipedia link as like, we had to write the essays and you have to put down like where you found the evidence or whatever that was. You have to leave links and everything. They're like, you put Wikipedia, we're tossing that paper out. You left me a Wikipedia link, and I deleted that comment. And then I think I made a video, but I think eventually I turned it. I just deleted it. But the guy was like, I didn't send you a Wikipedia link. I was like, that shit was a Wikipedia. I know what Wikipedia looks like. Just like, and I was like, I'm not arguing with him. I'm not. I'm just not. But I'm like, and I told people, if you're gonna argue with me or like give me your fucking opinion, whatever, fine. It's the internet. I accept it. But when you put Wikipedia down there, there's just something wrong with your brain. It's just I'm so glad I never became a teacher because that's what I was studying for, to become a history teacher. But I was like, fuck that shit. A little fact about me. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Fair enough. I mean, Wikipedia is fine technically, but anyone can edit Wikipedia if they have an account there. And but at the same time, they do have moderators that will eventually catch up to the bullshit you just put in. And if you don't have a proper reference, then they will information out and this. So technically Wikipedia is okay to use, but at the same time, you got to use some common sense and look at what you're reading on there and be like, okay, this doesn't really line up. Someone's obviously put in something, incorrect, or just an opinion-based nugget of it. So you got to take it with a grain of salt sometimes. So it's not completely bullshit, but it's also not completely factual either.
Yeah. It's like it will become truth eventually. Like that's basically what it is. Eventually it will be true. Just not right now.
Yeah, I guarantee that's how the whole fucking groove metal and pirate metal and metal thing came about. So many people just kept putting it in there because their teenage friends thought that that's what it was. And eventually Wikipedia is just like, fine, you can fucking have this as a genre. It's fine. They just gave up. They're like,
Well, I doubt there's metalheads in Wikipedia, so they're probably just like, okay, yeah, that's true. So they're probably just like that.
teenagers say it's true, and the band they are, well, I guess it must be a real genre.
How did we get on this topic? We should just rename it like, let's talk about Wikipedia. Metal in Wikipedia. Wow, that's a good series right there. Doesn't Loudwire has a series like that? Like they get like the artist and they're like, okay, we're going to read you your Wikipedia info. You're going to tell us that's false.
Yeah, they have that. It's called like Wikipedia true or false thing with the artists. I've seen a bunch of those. They're actually pretty cool. There's some that's like completely way off base, and then there's some that are like pretty true. There's on there like Greg or whatever his name is from Bad Religion, the vocalist. He's on there talking about certain things, and like he like confirms some things. He like makes fun of it as well, because some people put in like their opinion pieces basically, and he says I can't remember what it was, but they snuck in the word unfortunately. Bad Religion did this. Singer's like, yeah, well, unfortunately, your opinion's full of shit. And then it's just like, oh, it's so funny.
Yeah. Wow, we got off way topic. Is there any questions in the stream or anything like that? I guess not, huh? I can't find the comments or anything.
I'm looking. I'm scanning it over.
I basically just see some sarcastic remarks at this point. I don't see anything that holds any.
Shouting out bands, basically. For the most part. I was going to add, Jesse, you being from Canada, have you heard of Slaughter?
Yeah, they have that album title that I can't remember right now. Apelelago, or I don't know.
Right.
But
yeah, they're from Canada.
They're not really my cup of tea, but they're all right.
Well, I was gonna tie that in also. How I was saying about Thrash. They're another band that carried out influenced a line of death metal bands. If you go back and you ask bands early, like Floridian death metal bands, they're gonna say they like bands like the real Slaughter from Canada, Sarcophago, and then you had bands like Sepultura coming out, and there's a Thrash, even though like Sarcophago is revered as a black band, you do hear a lot of thrash elements in their music, and you can't deny that. And then you got bands like Celtic Frost, definitely influencing death metal bands, but you know that you can definitely hear the thrash influence into that music, and a lot of early death metal bands are going to tell you bands like Celtic Frost and all these other bands that I just mentioned. And then Jax mentioned earlier, Possessed, she would consider them more like a thrash band than a death metal, even though they're considered death metal. I would consider them a little bit more death metal, but I definitely agree that the thrash is definitely that. No doubt about it, that the influence behind it. You can't deny that. And you listen to the guitars of bands like Merciful Fate, and it carries on into different areas of metal, and it's going to carry on forward through. And I think it's when you look back and if somebody says, hey, I really get into thrash, and you know what? I always like to try and pick different types of thrash that, you know, something from my favorite genre thrash, which we all know, hey, what's this here? I love that German thrash metal for sure. Like, here we go. I know I showed it off last time, but hey, I got to. I just love. I've had this patch for years, and I just put it on my jacket. So, so
Toxic.
I would usually suggest a German thrash band, a power thrash band, a progressive thrash band. You know, a little bit of some of each, because they might gravitate to one of these bands. If you only point them to one taste of thrash, they might not like thrash at all. They might pass up a band that they liked. You know.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. All right, I'm just responding to the chat here.
I don't even know how you guys see the comments. I don't even see them. But at the same time, I'm like telling myself, do I really want to see them?
I'm looking at my iPad separate from my computer.
Okay. I have to go on separate. Okay, I'll go on.
Yeah, I'm cheating.
Yeah,
I'm using two devices.
Yeah, I got a tab open for the Google Hangouts, and then I got another tab open for the stream. Like, I go to the link that people would be watching the stream on, and I kind of check the live chats on the side. So I have like the Google Hangout window here, and then I can see behind it the chat going on the right side. But yeah.
Okay, yeah.
I wish I could.
I
wish I could give the chat like some really good punk bands. Honestly, just go.
I'm sorry. I'm laughing at the one in the comments. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt. Like, Mr. Death Metal, I don't know if you're still watching. I put TLC on pause, so I'm gonna finish watching. I was in the middle just because before I got on here, I was watching Tables, Ladders, and Chairs match on WWE, but I put it on pause. So, oh my god, I'm sorry, Mr. Death Metal. I'm still trying to figure out the whole live stream thing. I'm sorry, that made me laugh. Continue.
No worries, but honestly, if you want to see some like decent punk bands, I've got a playlist of all my punk collection updates. Just go watch the 4 or 5 of those videos. You'll see some decent punks in there. Like, early Clash was great. Anything past give them enough rope is quotable. There's like maybe 4 songs on London's Burning or London Calling that's okay and listenable. Like, I have London Calling. I am not listening to anything past that for the Clash. Like, there's like one decent EP by fucking the Crass, like, I know, like, the punks. Oh, the Crass are the best, band. But honestly, anything past the Feeding of 5,000 EP is questionable. All you need is the Feeding of 5,000. But there's really, really good street punk bands that are out still to today. Like, Breakout's really good. Defused is really good. Blatoidea is really good. I actually have a Blatoidea shirt, like, tucked away. Fuck. I'm just trying to look at my collection. Good if you like female punk vocals.
Who, like Blondie or Wendy O, the Plasmatics?
Spasmatics?
Wendy O.
Yeah, did
Purple
good.
Candy.
Someone mentioned them in the chat. Seth Putnam. Yeah.
My
This
God, I haven't
band's
heard of
also
Thrash Cats in a long time. People used to love them.
this band's pretty good too. The good the Skins. I need to get their other album, but yeah, the Foreskins are some good oi punk. Like the UK subs were really good. The oh fuck. I need their first album, the fucking Bristol one. Can I not think of? They're so good, but they're like old oi kind of punk. Sham 69. Sorry, there we go. Sham 69 are great. There's the Cockney Rejects. They're good too. Man, if you asked me like 4 or 5 months ago, I would have been able to have been all over this. But like a transition from punk, like my punk obsession, so the thrash obsession, I just kind of like my brain oozed out a lot of my punk like knowledge.
It happens.
Fuck. Like Casualties are pretty good. I know a lot of people don't like the Casualties now because of Jorge's like questionable ideas, but he wasn't really like charged with it. He was kind of like accused of it, but then he like the charges never stuck. But he ended up quitting the band anyway because of the accusations. But you know, the Casualties music is still fucking great. DI is really good. They're a really good kind of like hardcore band. Is another one. Their middle album wasn't the greatest, but like their first album and the third album was really good. There's just so many. Cockspur, good one. They're from England. I think someone mentioned Rudimentary Peni in the chat at one time. Good, yep. The Business is really good. Yellow Stitches, they're a really good punk band from the States, I think. Oh, also, I need to get some GBH albums for sure. Probably a GBH shirt sometime. The Violent Affair band's good. Monster Squad band is good. I'm not into Anti-Nowhere League anymore. I know someone in the chat mentioned Anti-Nowhere League, but yeah, I'm not really into them anymore. I just hits somewhere if someone wants it. I don't know. Any of you guys have any bands you want to shout out before we shut this stream down? Because it's already like 10 o'clock and I gotta do my mommy put the kids to bed and stuff like that. So
No, I'm pretty good.
Yeah, me too. I think I mentioned most of the bands that I know, like Fear and Screwdriver. That's about it. Dead
all right,
Kennedys.
cool. Well, yeah, Dead Kennedys are pretty good. I need to get more of them in my collection. I need to get their like first one or Rotten Eyeballs or something like that.
Yeah.
But yeah. Well, guys, thanks for joining me here. Much appreciated to Jax from Jaxby the Ripper. And thank you to Jessica from My Life as a Death Metal Drummer's Wife. thank God for me able to actually be able to pronounce that name correctly. And thank you to the chat for sticking with us, throwing in your opinion bands and stuff like that. As usual, I will try to include the top 5 or 6 favorite Jax and Jessica and myself and whatnot. I might even bug the Rebellion stream chat post stream and see if or if any of them have like their favorite thrash or punk they want to add to the list, and I'll throw that in the description box below. And I'll try to remember to put in that new wave of old school thrash metal channel. Definitely check them out. Have so many thrash metal bands on there if you're interested in that kind of thing. And if you like thrash, the old school thrash, you definitely should be interested. So keep your mind and give it a shot. So that's it. That's the end of Sinister Sunday 11. For Glory, for the Rebellion, Sinister Sunday over.
Bye.